Hi, welcome to the Armada Music listening session. And my name is Aron Friedman. I'm a journalist and a DJ producer, and I'm very pleased to be sitting next to Eelke Kleijn, who I think is a great producer. And I'm very happy to say that we're going to listen to his new album, which is right here. It's called Oscillations. Artwork is really cool, by Jack Van Zet. Really nice. And we're going to listen to it track by track. It just came out, right? I saw it was already on Spotify.
Yeah, 4 weeks ago.
Nice. And you're going to actually tell us more about the stories of how the tracks came to be, right?
Yeah. I want to tell, I want to show some of the ideas that I had while I was making the album. And there's a lot of nice stories connected to each track, so.
Yeah, super cool. We're going to take it track by track, and I'll just, you just let me know when you want to hear, let us hear something different. But let's go through it and see where it takes us.
Yeah. I'm going to start by telling something about the album as a whole. I'd say the album was half done pre-COVID, and the other half was made during COVID. So the way I work is like I like to test my tracks in the club, and then I come back home and I make adjustments. And I was able to do so for the first couple of singles, so tracks like The Magician and The Hierophant, I was able to test them extensively.
Right.
And then there were quite a few tracks like Control and a few others that were made entirely in the past, half year, 7 months.
So it's kind of it's like the people at home. It's for an artist like you. It's also just really a different story of being pre-COVID and post-COVID, even musically, I guess, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it does affect you in a way, even when you're in the studio. And we thought about maybe pushing the album further back, but I was like, well, everyone's at home right now, and let's just go for it and let's release it, this September. So that's what we did.
Cool. Well, shall we take it away?
Yeah. So I'm going to start by saying, if you listen to my music, a lot of artists say like, well, there's a deeper meaning behind this or a deeper meaning behind that. With me, it's slightly different. There's usually not a deeper meaning behind the track. It's just something that I really like. And when I get into the studio, I'm just, tweaking buttons until something cool comes out. There was a bit of a theme to the album, though. It's named Oscillations, and the idea behind that was that in the past year, or maybe longer, I've been really excited by things like astronomy, quantum mechanics, and so Oscillations refers to everything in the universe is made up of sine waves, from the audio, the music you listen to, all the way down to the tiniest particles.
Everything's vibrating, right?
Yes, yeah. And so that was a little reference to that. And then that theme comes back in some of the tracks as well, like M87, and there's a few others. So that's the theme I've been writing the album to. I'm just going to start by playing the first track on the album, which is Oscillations, the title track. Yeah. And I'm going to play 30 seconds or so. And if I assume everyone already knows the tracks. If not, listen to them later on. And Spotify.
Exactly.
So this is Oscillations.
Nice.
Yes.
And so the vocal is by
Yasha Daniel. Yeah. I'm going to start with the basic idea for this track. I did a track back in 2013 called Tale of Two Lovers, and it was very violin inspired with a lot of classical instruments. And I've always wanted to do a sort of unofficial follow-up for that track. And that's what this track started out. And I actually made the idea for the track while I was on tour in Argentina. I had a really long layover at the Buenos Aires airport, Ezeiza, and I had my laptop and everything with me, and so I started producing. And I'll play the very first version of this track for you.
This is the one that you made in the airport?
Yes.
Yeah, it's already there, huh?
Yeah, you can tell that the bass and everything is already there. Some of the strings are already there, and usually I'm very picky. So when I have something like this, I'll come back home and I start to adjust. And some of these ideas, they will change a lot. In this case, there were a lot of things from the original version are still present in the final one.
Mm-hmm. How do you know how much you can edit? It's like they always say, you know, a true artist knows when to when something's finished. How do you know something's finished?
For me, the magic trick is stepping away from the record for a while. So if you've done a version that you think is good enough, I get away from it, and then 3 weeks later I'll listen to it again, and if I still like it, that's when I know this is going to be a good track, you know. So in terms of the vocal for this track, I did the complete the instrumental completely before the vocal was written, and then the way a lot of vocals are written is I gave the track to my publisher with the sort of vocal I'm looking for, and then he will put it out to a couple of different writers, and they will start writing, you know, their lyrics to the track.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so
it's
I got
like a pitch.
Yes, almost like a pitch. Yeah. And so I got a couple of really good ones. Yasha did this amazing vocal, and the funny story is, originally I was working on this track with the vocal by Diana, which is also featured on You. Mm-hmm. And when I got Yasha's vocal, I liked it, but because I was already thinking of another vocal, I passed on it originally. And then weeks later, maybe a week or a week and a half later, I woke up in the middle of the night and I had Yasha's voice in my head with this song, and I was like, "Ooh, maybe I shouldn't have passed on that." Yeah. And fortunately, we were able to get the vocal back, and we did some additional takes, and yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's a very sensitive record. The instrumental was already very sensitive, and then his vocals just adds a lot to that.
Yeah, it amplifies, huh?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Nice.
So that's the main story behind Oscillations.
Cool. So I'm kind of psyched about the next track.
Yes.
Magician.
The Magician. Yes. Let's play a little bit of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm psyched about it because it really like it's very mesmerizing, the hook, you know.
Yes, so the idea behind this track is I wanted to do a record that has that typical bassline sound that you hear. I think that was made famous by bands like Depeche Mode and Kraftwerk.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I thought I really wanted to do a track like that, but in a modern sort of setting. So I'll play you my first idea for this one, because it's nice to hear that. So like most of the elements were already present, and that's quite rare because I usually end up changing a record quite a lot. In this case, I think in that first day I had all the nice elements that I wanted. For me, the bass line sort of carries the record, and then I did that string sound on top. The vocal was also something I found on the first day. And so the only thing I really needed to add in those next weeks were all the percussion bits and the structure.
Yeah, but also the hi-fi, because the original sounds.
Yeah, you can definitely
really,
tell.
Really hear the.
Yeah, it needs all those little swirly sounds and things.
Yeah.
And I think this was the quickest track on the album. In terms of how
those are the best, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like.
Yes, and it's funny because sometimes you spend hours tweaking on records. There's a few in here that I'm going to play later that really took a really long time, and this one was just finished really quickly.
Yeah. Sometimes when you edit for too long, right, you just kind of take out the urgency and the spontaneity out of it, right? Yeah.
And for me again, that trick is putting it away for a while and then coming back to it later. And this track, fortunately, I wrote. Probably somewhere mid 2019, so I was able to test it quite a lot in that period before, and every time I came back, made tiny adjustments. If people want to dive further into this track, I actually put a tutorial on YouTube where I go into all the little details, like a 45-minute how I made it, sort of.
Cool. Yeah, good one. Actually, the next track I think is one of my favorites of the album, and I also like the title because it's it's
a supermassive black hole.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my my little link to Oscillations, and so the idea when I said there's almost never an idea behind the music. This is one of the rare tracks where there was an idea behind the music. I thought, what if I were close to a black hole and everything would get distorted, how would music sound in that case? And this is sort of the result of that thought experiment.
Cool. I think it's a good place for you to be, man. Near black holes.
let me play a quick 30 seconds of that.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. So this whole track was based on an improvisation on my modular, and nice. It might be nice to play that before I say anything else.
Right.
So this was a patch I made on my modular, and I'm not playing the different notes. I sort of did that with the sequencer, right. And the idea behind it's only playing 6 notes, but I'm pushing the melody forward every random instant. So what happens is every now and then it does 2 notes in the count of 1,
right?
Which to me sounded really interesting. And as soon as I got to the sequencer, it also posed problems because there was no normal signature for this track.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I did was, look up the tempo, because it was a random weird sort of tempo. I think this track is 115 point something.
It's like a puzzle.
Yeah.
You had to,
yeah. And then the time signature, I found out if I do 2 bars of 10/4 and then 1 bar of 11/4, the whole track sort of stays in shape,
Yeah.
So that was the first trouble with this record.
Yeah.
And then after that, you could hear from this sample, the melody doesn't go up yet. It's just those 6 notes. So what I did was in my sequencer, I chopped it up in all the nice bits, and I pitched a lot of them by hand, a 5th note upwards to get that nice sort of jump to the
Nice.
higher melody.
So it's a real artisanal track almost.
Yes. There was almost, apart from the strings you hear, all the other sounds are based upon this same improvisation. So it's me pushing all those little notes through grain delays and reverbs and samplers and just messing with it. And that was a very interesting way of working for me as well. I really enjoyed that. And it was also the last track that I did for this album.
Mhm.
So I had 10 tracks ready, and I thought I needed another down-tempo track. And so this was written this year in, I think it was June or maybe even early
Yeah.
July.
It sounds very lockdown-ish.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
definitely.
Yeah, it resonates.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm also interested about the track after, which is, I guess it's on the flip side, right?
It's on the flip side, yes. Let me...
Flip it around. There we go. It's called Woodstock.
It's Woodstock, after the famous Dutch beach club Woodstock.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
sort of my I've played
It's the
there.
best beach club.
Yeah,
right?
it's
in
one
Holland.
of my favorite clubs in Holland, in
Yeah.
the world probably.
Agreed.
And I've played there every year for the past 5 or 6 or so, I guess. And this was sort of my ode to
Homage.
Woodstock. Yeah, my homage.
Yeah. It deserves homage. you
Yes,
know?
yeah, for sure.
Cool. Let's have a listen. Nice.
Yeah.
Just one thing. For the people at home, if you have a question for Eelke, drop us a line, and maybe we can ask it.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, to go back to the Woodstock thing. Tell me about how it came about.
Yeah, so let me start by playing the initial idea for this track, which was
Cool.
Since late 2018, I'm producing on the road as well. So before, I would always just make music at home, and I wouldn't do anything on the road. And since late 2018, I started producing on flights and stuff as well. So this was made on a flight to...
What's the before you go into it? What's the difference between doing that and at home? Is there?
It was
like next to people and
yeah. There's two big things for me. One is like I was so much on the road that I felt like I didn't have enough time to make music, which was one reason. And the other thing is if you're on an airplane and you don't have all those fancy tools and all the great speakers, and you really get back to basics. Like it's great for sketching very quick ideas, and so a lot of these ideas are made in like 1 or 2 hours, and then you can't really work on a track because there's so much noise. And so I'll do an idea and then I go on to the next one.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
So this was made on a flight, to LA, I think. And I really liked those chords. They were slightly different. I don't remember exactly what they were. The track is in F minor, but it's slightly weird in the sense that it sometimes jumps out of the scale. So I kind of like that. And as soon as I had this, I knew it was something good that I should work on more when I got at home. And if you listen to the final one, it's a little bit more laid back. This was quite up-tempo sort of start. When I had Woodstock in my mind, I think about the club, and I think about how there's such a big difference there between a daytime vibe and a nighttime vibe. And I thought it would be nice if the record sort of showed that. So it has the climax of the song where that dissonant melody really comes forward, but then the breakdown is very sort of floaty, and the intro is very laid back as well. Yeah. So that was sort of a deliberate choice on that edge.
Cool.
And just after starting with this idea, I got the Moog 1 synthesizer, and so that was basically the only thing I was playing with.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And so almost every sound in this track comes from the Moog 1.
Nice.
And
that's the way people used to make music, right? They had two machines, and that was it. They had to do it. Yeah.
And like I said before, we've touched quickly on the sort of dissonant melodies. So
yeah, you were entering you were kind of going past the black hole here again, right?
Yeah. And the same for this track. The main melody, it goes off pitch ever so slightly, like up and down, and even it's almost too much, but it's about like finding that nice edge where it sounds great and original, but it doesn't hit you as too off key. And what's funny is one night, what I like to do is sometimes listen late at night to my own ideas on the phone, for instance, because it gives a really nice example of whether I'm on a good road, with making the track. And so I was listening to an earlier version of Woodstock, and I thought, Eelke, this is like way off key. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And then when I got back in the studio, I was like, oh no, I think I kind of like this, and so I kept it there. Like it's just over, but
sometimes you have to keep the imperfections, right?
Yes.
To make it more interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
cool.
So that was a big theme on this record, with a lot of the sounds all going just over that edge,
Yeah. Just like we're all feeling a little bit, right?
Oh yeah.
It's very befitting for this situation we're all in. Yeah. The next track actually was the last track you finished before the COVID, right?
That's right. Yeah. I finished this, I think it was early January or maybe mid-January, and I was on my way to Australia for a tour there in February. And so that was the only time that I had to test the record. And it was the instrumental, so it was a version without Yasha's vocals. And all the time while playing the instrumental version, the feedback was great, but I felt like it was missing something. So I thought it needed something more to sort of get to where I wanted it to be. And well, let's play a quick sample of it.
Let's check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this track, I tested in Australia, like I said, felt like it needed something. And I was already working with Yasha on Oscillations at the time. And so we thought, maybe he wants to write another vocal as well. So he did something for Distance. And originally we had a whole sort of chorus and a refrain, like we were on the way of turning it into a proper song, and I got the feeling that it was maybe a little bit too much or so. So at one point I just took those little bits of his vocal that said I am calling you, I'm watching you, and I started messing around with that a lot, pitching them and changing them around and doing all these effects. And that really gave me the vibe that I was looking for, like that sort of haunted vocal effect. Yeah.
It's got a bit of a
Yeah.
Haunted edge.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's funny, from this track, I also have a version that I started with, which I can play for you.
Yeah, please. Yeah, it's quite a different story, right?
Yes. The only thing that sort of survived the process was that lead
survived
melody.
Australia.
Yeah. No, the lead melody. This was pre-Australia, so this was really when I started back at home.
Yeah.
But that lead melody survived. The chords survived, but that's it. I redid everything else, and
you can still hear the.
You can hear the idea, but sometimes I just feel like I have something good, but I'm looking for how to produce it to make it really stand out in some way. Yeah. And with this track, it wasn't a huge search. Like sometimes I'm really spending weeks on a single track. With this one, it went a little bit quicker. But that lead melody was the one thing that I knew I wanted to keep in there. And if you compared it to, it's a whole different track by the time I was finished.
Yeah. Cool. Then there's also one of the older tracks on it is the next one, right? Is
Taking Flight.
At least it originated.
Yes.
From an old, but you finished it.
Taking Flight
later,
is an idea from 2016 that I'm gonna play for you in a bit.
Yeah, cool.
And
that's interesting to hear the difference between 2016 and now.
Oh, it's
a world of difference.
It's a world of difference. Let's start by listening to what it turned out.
Exactly. Like. Or maybe we can do it the other way around.
Oh, that's actually nice.
You want to try that?
Let's try that. So this is the original idea that I had back in 2016. So I really like those chords.
Yeah.
I was writing back in 2016. I was testing my hands at a few different tracks, like lower tempo, different sort of settings, and this was one of them. And most of those tracks I ended up doing nothing with, but this one I really like those piano chords. And at one point I thought, what if I take those chords and I try and build a new track around it, and that's what Taking Flight became. So if I play the final version of that now.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to go to the next final, I think.
So once again, if you guys have any questions, let us know.
I want to play a little bit of the vocal as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Long live the kings and queens, the stars of the silver screen, sharing views on Mullen Drive. Make believe just to say these words, reality.
Yeah, super.
Yeah, but the only thing that's still there from that original idea are those chords. I turned those piano chords into the strings that you can hear in the refrain, and then everything else was added along the way.
How do you if you think about yourself where you were 4 years ago and now sound wise, what's the biggest step that you made if you look back?
I think the biggest difference is maybe that I'm quicker to realize when something is good. That's always been my biggest issue, sort of. I think it's almost every producer's issue. Like you write a lot of things. You're basically
going towards your core, but it's like a long journey.
Yeah,
going towards the black hole.
Yeah, and that's always been my most difficult thing. Like you write all these different tracks and recognizing like this is amazing, go with that, and that is not that good, and skip that one. And I feel like in the past years I've got better and quicker at identifying those really good ideas from the just okay ones,
Right. Yeah. Must be liberating to be able to do that quicker.
Yeah.
All the struggling and doubting and
like I said before, what really helps is taking a step back and just waiting for 3 or 4 weeks and then going back to it, and that is often a very good idea for me to hear if it's really good or not.
I can imagine that because I mean your sound is very hi-fi. It's very that you're someone who has a trouble sometimes letting go of things easily. So
for sure,
it's probably a really good. It's almost like Zen Buddhism, like let it go.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
No. So I sort of had, and let me play that for you as well, because this track has had many different forms, and this is the version that I sent to Nathan when we just started working together.
Yeah.
So by this time it was starting to take shape. Those piano chords had transformed into regular strings, and then in the final version I messed with them a lot and they go all crazy. But in this version it were just sort of played strings. And I had sent this song to my publisher originally to try and find a good vocal, and nobody got the vibe that I was sort of looking for. And Nathan Nicholson is the singer from the Boxer Rebellion, and we'd been in the studio once or twice before, like working on some ideas and on some sketches, and those didn't get released yet. But when I had this song in mind, I was thinking, well, maybe Nathan could do something really cool with this. So I sent it to him earlier this year, and he really liked that setup that I just played, and so we started. And normally I don't really get involved in the vocal process, so I will send out a track and then I'll wait for them to come back with something, and I'll go like, oh, I like this, but I don't like that. And with Nathan, it felt more like a natural sort of collaboration. So
it's more like a jam almost.
We would be on Skype or WhatsApp together, for instance, and he would sing some things. I'm like, oh, I like this, let's try that. And then he sent a few ideas my way. I ended up, and then instead of using his using lyrics, he just did the melody with his voice, and I ended up cutting up it a bit, it up a little bit, and then moving things around, and so he became like an instrument in your composition. Cool. I like to think of vocals in terms of I don't always necessarily listen to the lyrics. I listen more to the emotion they sort of convey, and eventually we settled on the lyric or on the melody of the voice going steady for the first bit and then going really high for the second bit, and I love that contrast. And he's a really good writer as well in terms of lyrics. The song is about you know, getting lost in Hollywood, sort of getting lost when you're trying to make it there. And he's got such an amazing way with words. And when it comes to lyrics, I don't always have a very strong opinion. Unless I don't like him, then I will have a strong opinion.
Yeah.
But as long as it's good, I tend to not notice too much, and I listen more to the voice and if I like it with the music, you know. But with Nathan, you know, it's gonna be, you know, amazing.
It's also lyrically,
yes, and really good.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
What about the track that's next, the one with Diana?
That's let me start by saying that Diana, when we were talking before about tracks that are getting pitched with the publisher, so Diana wrote something for Oscillations, and for a while I was trying with her vocal on the track, and that it was really good, but I somehow it felt like I needed to write a new track for her vocal, because I couldn't get the two to fit the way I wanted to, and I really loved her vocal. And this is actually the vocal that is in You. It's the exact same one that we were trying to put in Oscillations.
Right.
They're both in C minor, and so they would overlap, you know.
Yeah. But sometimes there's just like an element that doesn't. You really have to like let it go again. Like
it's weird sometimes. Yeah. You love the vocal and you love the track, and sometimes you can't get it to work together. And so I said, okay, I love this. I'm gonna write a new track for you. So just hang on, you know, and we'll make this work. And cool. So that became You. Yeah. And let me start by playing a little bit of the final track.
Yeah.
So this was one of those tracks that took ages to get right. Starting already with what I just told about the vocal. And then even when I started writing a different track for Diana, I had such troubles finding the right tone with the music. And I originally wanted to do a like a proper dance floor record, like 4 to the floor with a steady beat. And let me play that idea for you that I had.
Yeah.
Every path that I take, glowing with silver linings.
Cool. They're actually both really good.
Yeah, for some reason I spent a lot of time tweaking this one, and I just couldn't get it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like you need to have that feeling like this is it.
It's got to click, right?
Yeah. And I couldn't get it with this version. And then if you listen to this one and the track that eventually ended up on the album, the melody with those bells that survived, because even before this version, I had a different 4 to the floor version that didn't have those bells in them, and I couldn't get that right either. And so we're talking a process that is spanning, you know, multiple weeks, maybe months even, for this track, where I was producing on it for 1 or 2 days, leaving it for a week, coming back, you know, and so I ended up doing 3 different versions before I finally settled on the breakbeat that I felt made the track more special.
Yeah, it's very special, and it's also nice. It's also a nice add-on to the to the album. It kind of gives it a little twist, a little twist and turn, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And especially because at that time we already had quite a few dance floor records, like Four to the Floor, and I didn't want it to be a full, like an only dance floor album, you know. I wanted to have some down tempo and some variation on the album, and so I was happy that I could get the breakbeat to work.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, what about the next track, Tide?
Yes, that was one of the quickest tracks on the album that I made, and I'm going to start by playing a little bit from it.
Yeah.
So I did the initial idea for this track in a single day, and the initial idea was, I can play it for you, but it was actually probably most of the track already, and the only thing I ended up adding at the end were like those really dark sort of drums, and you know, some of the off tune again of the synths, which wasn't that obvious in the first versions. Let me play that idea quickly.
Yeah.
So all of these elements made it into the final version. It's based on that melody that just goes slightly up and down.
Right.
And then I added lots of instrumentation behind, mostly going for the sort of classical sounds. So a violin, cello, those type of sounds. And the main thing that wasn't present in this version is the lead that comes in at the end, which was I when I started the track, I didn't have that moog yet.
Right.
And then when so I left it. This one I left for a really long time. I wrote it late last year or maybe early this year, and then it was one of the last tracks that I finished for the album, because I knew it was already good. It just needed that extra little bit, and so the moog synth was added at the end.
Right.
But pretty much everything else was done in that first version.
Yeah. We have a question from Josh. He says, are you also going to release some of the alternate versions maybe in a later
I might
stage?
Well, actually, what I'm playing is pretty much all of the alternate versions. There's they're like 1 minute samples, so it would take a lot of effort to produce them again.
Yeah.
There's one track which I'm going to play later on, which has a completely full alternate version. Two actually, and might be fun to have a listen at those later on.
Yeah, cool. Let's move on to the
Hierophant.
Yeah, the Hierophant. Yeah, also a really cool track.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This one has an alternate version that I'm going to play for you. Let's start by playing the original.
Yeah.
I'm just going to skip quickly to this middle bit.
Yeah, because that's quite different.
Yeah. So the story behind this track is, I'll play you this idea. This is what sparked this track. And I really liked that vocal, and I really liked that bass line going up and down.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get a proper version with that bass line going up and down. I just couldn't. I tried for ages, and I wasn't sure where to take it. It wouldn't work. And so I settled for a bass line that stays on the one note, on the G, and then does like little jumps up and down at the end of each bar. And I actually ended up doing a full version of this tune somewhere mid last year, and I was playing Tomorrowland in Belgium at the time, and I actually played it in my set there, and I'm gonna play it for you so you can hear an alternate version of this track.
Yeah.
So this is basically that version where the bass line went up and down, and the whole basically the first 2 minutes are the same, the last minute is the same, and everything in between changed in the end. And I played this at Tomorrowland, and for those first 2 minutes, everyone was like, "Wow!" And then as soon as that bass started changing, sort of went like that. And then in the breakdown, the breakdown bit was the same. So just after the breakdown, you have this sort of pumping bit where all the melodies are out and you just have the bass and some crazy effects going on. And that really worked again at Tomorrowland. And then as soon as those chord changes came in, it was like, yeah. So I ended up just throwing everything out in between the 2 and the 6 minutes, and I went back at it. Yeah. And I finally found out what the problem was, because that original idea and this version I just played, they were all in G minor. And only when I went back to the tune and I started playing major chords, I played G major and then F major, and I think it's E after that. That's when all of a sudden the magic sort of happened. And so that whole track is in major, which is it's uncommon for a lot of dance tunes, but it really worked for that one, and it took a while to get it right, I think.
Yeah, sometimes I guess major and minor can be real. Like the difference between those moods can really be something that makes the both of them stronger, right?
For sure, yeah. And especially because there's so much dance music in minor that you're already tuned to those changes, you know. If you hear the chord, you know what the bass is going to do, and that's why I like to work in major every now and then, because you're hearing things that you distance, for instance, has the same thing. There's a few major chords in there, and it's weird because you know those changes, but you don't necessarily hear them, you know, in that order all the time.
Right.
And so that's finally what made this track for me, you know. I'm getting that done.
It's maybe a little bit non-related to the album, but it's an interesting question by Estelle. What do you miss most about playing? About
not playing.
About not playing. Yeah, exactly. What do you miss about it?
Yeah, the interaction. You know, just getting to a full club and, you know, playing new tunes and seeing the best feeling in the world for me is if you go into a club and you play something that you've just made the week before, and so nobody knows it and people are going crazy to it, because you know if that happens, you know it's a good track, you know. And I really miss that. Yeah. And it's important in the writing process as well. Like, I will test tracks and then go back into the studio and change things, you know, like with this one, because the feedback at Tomorrowland wasn't good. I basically just scrapped the whole track and started again.
Yeah. So it's a missing link in the whole process.
For sure.
Yeah. What about well, we're almost at the end of the album. We have 2 more tracks to go. second to the first, no, how do you say it? Second
to last, yeah.
Second to last track. It's called Control.
Yes.
Is that something is that something that you, is that a theme in your, because you seem to be quite in control when you're
I am a bit of a control freak, I guess. And I don't...
Maybe all DJs are.
Right? You have to be, I think, up to some point for sure.
Yeah. You have to be in control, but sometimes...
The name Control comes from control voltages, so CV, which is what you use in modulars for the signal, and the pitch. And
makes sense.
So I thought it was because the basic idea from Control was all modular. I'll play the idea a little bit later, but so I thought it would be nice to have an homage to that sort of. Let's start by playing the original track.
By all means. Just about modulars, it's an addiction, right?
Yeah, it definitely is, and it actually changed my workflow completely, because I got into modular around 2016, and before that I was working with a lot of hardware, but not those sort of freely patchable things, and it's changed so many things for me. Just inspiration, like coming up with things. I would never write this melody if I was behind a keyboard. It's almost, I would say it's almost impossible. These are things you come up with when you're messing with sequencers on a modular and you create something out of the ordinary, So it sparked a lot of ideas for me, and this one I'm going to play the original cool. idea that I started with.
Nice. It must have taken some editing to get to this. With the pitching and everything.
The funny thing was, I remember I was at home and I was telling my wife, like, I really want to make one of those really weird jumpy melodies today, So I'm gonna try and do that with the modular, and it only took me like 30 minutes to come up with that melody, and I was normally, if it's so quick, I don't always trust it, but with this one I was like, well, the melody's great, I just need to fix everything else, and so in the final version that melody has never changed. Well, that little step up has maybe it has lessened a little bit. It's still in there, but not as often. But that basically sparked the whole idea, and then once I had that and I had the bass change, it was just a process of working on getting the drums to have like a really good impact and getting all those little melodies in there. And I ended up, the vocal that you hear throughout the track says control voltages, and it's basically just me on a mic going with the vocoder until it sounded cool, So it's the only track on the album where I'm using my own voice.
Yeah. Nice. Is that a first? Have you done that before?
No, it's probably a first, actually. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it takes us almost... It takes us to the last track.
Yeah, and that one
that was a tough one, right?
Yes, that was the hardest track on the album to finish. There's a really nice story to that. Let me start by playing it a little bit.
Yeah. plays the guitar?
It's Arno Krapman.
Oh, nice.
I do play guitar, but I'm not great. So I came up with the melody and I played it in a demo for him. But the problem is, if I play it myself, it's not going to be that. I could probably play it, but it's not going to be super interesting. There's no like nice slides and no little effects and things.
Right.
And so when I had that melody, I went to Arno and I said, listen, I need something like this, but it's got to sound cooler, you know, it's got to sound different. And so he did all the improvisations as well that you hear later on. And the funny thing is this track changed a lot. There's a nice story to that. Let me play this for you first. This is the original version that I wanted to include on the album for a while, but I just couldn't get it right. So what I wanted with that track is sort of a Balearic feeling, almost a little bit old school. But I couldn't get it right with this one, and it was feeling a little bit forced almost. I wasn't too happy with it, and so what happened? We actually recorded the guitar to this version, and then in the end, when I still wasn't happy, what I did was I pitched the guitar down by 1 or 2 notes, I think. And that, of course, changed the tempo as well. So all of a sudden, we were at 105 point something.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, the guitar still sounds really cool like this, but everything else, you know, can go in the trash. So I built. I built
a whole new thing around it.
I built a whole new thing around it. Yeah, and I also, one of the reasons was because I wanted to have it as a closing track, and I didn't want to have this banging song at the end of the album, and I felt like I needed something to contrast against those other songs, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's why I went with the down pitch for this one. I might keep as a little exclusive for my own sets every now and then.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Hey, so yeah. Then we reached the end of the album.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a really awesome ride. It was very very diverse and very. But it kind of makes sense. I don't know. It's just like It's one chunk of good music.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Please feel free to explore the ADE surroundings a little bit more. Just one more question. I also heard that you're planning to do a hybrid set, right, with this album?
A live show actually, even.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've played my live show a few times in 2018 and 19.
Mm-hmm.
The first time was at Digital. That was sort of the premiere, and that was in 2018. And then I played. I think I played it or was it in 19? Maybe I don't remember. But I played it 3 or 4 times more during that summer.
Right.
Well, and then the whole COVID thing happened, you know, so that sort of put a halt on that. But I do plan to play more live gigs with me playing the actual instruments and doing all the tracks, you know, as live as I can. Yeah.
Well, really looking forward to seeing you on a stage again. Yeah. Also looking forward to seeing you guys again. Thanks again for tuning in. This was Armada Music Listening Sessions with Eelke Kleijn. I would give you a hug or a handshake. We'll do the old elbow. And take care, stay safe, and have a good ADE, guys.
Thanks.